Revenge films.
I was living as a happy family of four with my husband, my son, and my daughter. My son is in the 8th grade and my daughter is in the 3rd. This was my first marriage, but when I met my husband, he already had a son who was 1 year old at the time. But his son was still very young, and since I had raised him from when he was a little boy, I had the same love for him as I do my own daughter. However, we lost my husband suddenly due to an accident. When I received the call, I was so shocked that I dropped my phone to the floor. Losing my husband was the most painful thing I had experienced, and the tears wouldn't stop. But then I saw my son desperately holding back his own tears as he was holding and comforting his little sister. And I realized that I needed to pull it together for them. I still couldn't believe that my husband was gone, but with the help of my son and my parents, we were able to complete the funeral. I thanked my parents and my relatives who helped, and as I was rushing to wrap up, in the corner of my eye, I caught my son standing in front of my husband's casket, alone, crying. When I saw that, this is no time for me to be crying. This is no time for me to be upset. I have to stand strong so that I can be a mother and a father to our children. With that in my heart, I decided that I would be the last person to cry. I was already working, and my husband's life insurance was also given to our family, so we didn't struggle financially. It was hard to be in the same space that my husband was no longer in. But I also didn't want to let go of this house that was full of our memories, so I decided not to sell it and try to stay here. And so my life with my children as a single mother started. But since my son was already in the 8th grade, I was able to leave my daughter in his care. When I would get home from work.
Hey, Mom, I made dinner, even though it's just curry.
What? No way! That's a huge help.
Kelly and I already ate. Do you want me to heat it up for you?
Maybe I'll go take a bath first.
Mommy, I already filled up the bathtub for you so you can get in straight away.
Thank you. Well then, I'll be quick. Even though they had just lost their dad, my son and my daughter did their best to help me. There was no way that they weren't sad after what happened, but I could tell that everyone was trying their best to move forward and do their best as a family. And one day, after coming home from school, my son locked himself into his room, and I got a little worried, so I tried talking to him. My son tried to say something, but then he quickly said it was nothing and pushed me away. I got worried that maybe something might have happened at school, and especially since he was studying for his high school entry exams. I thought that maybe he was flustered with some schoolwork, but I decided to leave him alone until he wanted to come talk to me about it himself. But then a few days later, one of my daughter's friends invited her over to a sleepover, so I was left alone at home with my son. Just as I was thinking about what to make for dinner, suddenly Thomas came to me as if he was going to start crying, and I was shocked by the words that came out of his mouth.
I found out that I'm not your biological kid, Mom. But I'm still just a middle schooler, so please, let me stay in this house until I graduate.
He said as he put his head down to me. His words sent me into a panic, and without thinking, I raised my voice. What are you saying? Who told you such a thing? Thomas was really small at the time, and when his father got remarried, I raised him as if he was my own son, and that's why my husband and I decided together that we wouldn't tell him. However, once he would become an adult, there would be a need to gather official paperwork for his passport and other residential needs, so we were planning on telling him around that. But then, my son was standing there in tears with his head bowed down to me, and I felt the blood rush to my head. You are my child! Biological or not, none of that matters! This house is your house! This is your home! Then Thomas looked up at me.
But Auntie said that I'm not your son, so that I would just be an inconvenience. And she told me that it was my responsibility to get a job straight after graduating middle school and move out without going to high school.
What did you say? My sister said such a thing? With tears streaming down his face, my son nodded. You idiot! After your dad died, why do you think it is that I can be so positive about moving on with our lives? It's because of you and Kelly. Because of you two, I can be strong and I feel like I have a reason to live. It may be true that you and I aren't blood related, But we are family, and I am your mom. Do you understand?
Yeah.
All right, then let's get in the shower and calm down a bit. I'll never let you leave this house after graduating. Do you hear me? While my son was in the shower, I immediately grabbed my phone and called my sister. Then,
Oh, perfect. I needed to talk to you. Next fall, my son is going to college in your state, but it's a waste to pay for the dorm, so can you just let him stay at your place? You're going to have an open room anyway, right?
stay at my place? Are you kidding me? More importantly, why did you say such a thing to my son? We were going to tell him that he wasn't my biological child when he became an adult. That wasn't something for you to tell him. And not only that, telling him to get out of the house? How dare you!
I was only telling him the truth. If your husband was still alive, that would be one thing. But he's already gone, so he may as well be a stranger's child. So I just told him the obvious, that's all.
Are you kidding me? There's no reason anywhere that boy should have to leave this house. The first and foremost, do you have any idea how much you've hurt him? The image of my son's crying face as he bowed his head to me came into my mind, and I was furious that I was crying while yelling.
Of course there's a reason. If that boy doesn't get out, then there won't be any room for my son, right? If he lives at your place, then we don't have to pay for the dorms or for his food expenses, right? You know ours is actually properly related to you by blood. Obviously, that kid should be the one to leave.
That kid you're talking about is my son. And you hurt my son because of your own personal and selfish reasons. I'll never forgive you. And what do you mean that you can't gather the money to let your son go to college and live in the dorms? Normally, you should have been saving for things like this, and you could apply for scholarships or student loans.
Excuse me, but that would just put us into debt. Why should I have to go into debt when there's something I could use for free? Plus, after your husband died, you got plenty of comfortable insurance deposit, didn't you? And that, please, you should be using it for your family.
I won't be spending a penny on you. My husband's insurance money is something he left behind for us, for our children's future.
Why are you being so stingy when you have the money? Ugh. Regardless of what you say, once I send my son's luggage to your place, then that's your problem. You better kick that little brat out by the time he graduates middle school.
I was beyond furious by my sister's attitude, and as soon as I hung up, I called my parents and explained the situation to them. My mother was in tears thinking about what my sister had done and to her grandchild. And my father was livid and immediately called my sister and her husband to their house. My sister must not have expected me to tell our parents, and when she got to their house, the blood left her face. But the reason became apparently quick. As soon as they arrived, my parents explained the situation to their son-in-law, what my sister had done to my son, and continued.
Why hadn't you prepared the expenses for your child to go to college? As a parent, that was your responsibility to make sure you were ready. And thanks to you, our grandson is traumatized!
They were furious. Then my brother-in-law went completely pale and turned to me.
I can't believe she said something that awful! I am truly so sorry. I have no idea why my wife would say such a thing. Our son's college expenses should all be prepared since we have been investing into his education his whole life. It should all be in our family bank account.
I glanced over at my sister, who was shaking. My brother-in-law and my father turned to her.
Don't tell me that you used up your child's education fund. You're kidding. That should have been at least $30,000 in there.
I just borrowed a little bit because we were tight on family funds. That's why if he lives at my sister's house, then it would be free and everything would be even.
Huh? Even though I'm giving you plenty enough of a salary? And I'm even giving you a bonus as well?
There are a lot of things to pay on small things that just add up. There's nothing I could do.
My mom suddenly chimed in. I sure hope you haven't been going to the casino, have you? Our neighbors across the street said that she often sees someone that looks just like you at the casino.
Of course not, that's on me.
She tried, but anybody could see that my sister was lying.
You used your own son's education funds on gambling, and then because you ran out of that money, you tried to kick my grandson out of his house? You scum of the earth!
On the spot, my dad opened his palm and slapped my sister right across the face. My sister scrunched her face from the pain and cried.
Oh, it hurts.
But my brother-in-law followed.
Because of your complete trash actions, you've heavily traumatized the child! So whatever pain you're feeling is nothing compared to that!
He really did look like he was looking at a pile of trash. My sister stood there sobbing. Soon after that, my brother-in-law was fed up with her, filed for divorce, and he gained full custody of their children. My parents also disowned my sister and told her that they never wanted to see her face again. My sister was kicked out of her house, and she had to move into a rundown apartment while she figures out how to pay back the $30,000 she spent, as well as a settlement fee for both her ex-husband and me. Apparently, she's working multiple part-time jobs around the clock, 7 days a week, but she barely has enough money to pay for her own food. But that was all her own doing, and I don't even have 1 mm of sympathy of her. At home, I explained everything to my son, including why we chose not to tell him all these years. Thomas seemed relieved as his eyes welled up in tears.
Thank goodness. I didn't know what to do.
He said with a quivering voice. You idiot! You and Kelly are the most important things in existence in this whole entire world. Now promise me you'll never think anything ridiculous like that again. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I may not have grown my son inside of me like I did my daughter, and gone through the pain of childbirth with him, but he is my precious child, and that will never change for the rest of our lives. And, more than anything, Thomas looks like his late father, and I feel like he keeps me connected to my husband. That's why I can keep my head up towards a bright future with my 2 children.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.